Welcome to On Scene. I'm Mason Matthews, and today I have Amy Coates with me. You can see I'm down a co-host today, but what we were going for is we really wanted to replace our On Scene cast with some people with hair. So we got a lot of it today. No, Joey had some job stuff, so he is actually deployed and is actually being a fireman somewhere else right now, which is pretty cool. So yeah, I'll be down him today. But very excited to have Amy here today. We're going to talk a little bit about her role at Shannon Medical Center and basically trauma services here in the Concho Valley. So a little bit of how I know Amy. So I've known Amy for, this is how old we are. You ready for this? So I've known her 10 years, I guess. So we used to work in the ER together, and she was a wonderful nurse and is now promoted and is now the Director of Trauma Services at Shannon Medical Center. So it's like a big job.
Yeah.
It's pretty officially official.
Yeah, but it's a lot of fun. We've got a great team.
That's awesome. That's awesome. I have also had the privilege of serving with Amy on several boards here in San Angelo, and we'll talk about those here in a second. So first and foremost, Amy, tell me a little bit about you. Where are you from? How'd you get to San Angelo? So just kind of tell everybody, introduce yourself.
Okay. Hi, I'm Amy Coates. Like Mason shared, I am the Director of Trauma Services at Shannon Medical Center. We've got a great team over there. So with all the things that we get to do, again, we have a lot of support at the hospital, great medical directors and a great trauma team and great staff in the hospital that obviously takes care of the patients in the Concho Valley. So I actually am an Army brat, and so I was born in Germany, and we moved back into the States, and we moved, every time my parents got restationed somewhere, we'd move. So typically every 6 months to 2 years. But I ended up my last 2 years of high school in El Paso, Texas, and we were residents of Texas, so I ended up staying in Texas for college. Cool. Went to Texas Tech. And went to Texas Tech and met my now husband there, and he's from San Angelo. So with my parents still moving around, I ended up moving here after I graduated. There are two great facilities here, hospitals, after I went to nursing school. So I ended up moving here, fell in love with San Angelo, and we've been here actually since 2000. I've been here since 2011. Cool. And just love living in San Angelo.
That's 10 years. I don't know if you know that.
I know. I was trying to just say a year instead of 10 years. We're getting old.
Yeah. Okay. Just wanted to point that out. Awesome. Well, tell me a little bit about, we talked about you being the Director of Trauma Services at Shannon Medical Center. Actually, before I get into that, tell me about, I mentioned that you and I have served on several boards together, and that's just kind of goes with, I think, both of our functions in our careers, that we kind of get obviously EMS and the hospital gets intertwined quite a bit. But we've had the opportunity to serve together on a lot of different things here in San Angelo. So tell me some of the boards that you serve on now.
Okay. And like Mason said, there's so many opportunities out there that we were able to join that go in with our jobs. But the RAC is an amazing organization all across Texas, and then they have different regions that you're within. So we're Trauma Services RAC K, and that is an amazing organization. We have a trauma injury prevention committee that I chair, and then we have our executive boards, our general membership boards that help make decisions on where grant money goes, as you know. So I've been able to serve on that since I took this role, and it's great. And then also the Safety City Board. And that has done some great things for our community. And so when I was offered to come sit on that board, I was really excited just because of what they've accomplished. And then not necessarily a board that we sit on, but with, I guess you would call it like a general membership with Safe Kids here in San Angelo. And the fact that we have that and Shannon continued that is just phenomenal for the community.
Yeah, I agree. So we're going to talk a little bit about, when we kind of get into what you do on a daily basis, we're going to talk a little bit about Safe Kids and probably even mention Safety City. So I don't want to get too far into those two. But they are. All of those are, I could tell you what those, all of those organizations and boards do for us here in San Angelo. You would be amazed at how much of the things that how much of the injury and prevention, material or programs that you see, education that comes out come from those boards. I mean, it's unreal, they do great things. So, tell me a little bit about so Director of Trauma Services. So obviously we think, okay, well, I know what trauma is, right, and services, so that's what you provide for the hospital, but it's a lot more than that. So tell me a little bit about your role and what that means.
Okay, so I love what I do, and I love that I had an opportunity to work with Shannon Medical Center. So my job really starts at trying to think how to start that. So really starts at auditing the charts. So we look at the patients that come in that have unfortunately had a traumatic event, and we look at the standard of care, what was done, was there anything we can improve on with those patients, was there a process we can help with, did the staff and the people taking care of this patient have what they needed? So we really start there, and it kind of just funnels into all the other things we get to do. So also there's a tie-in with emergency management, because if there's a disaster, you know, you may have trauma victims that come in, so we tie in and work with the emergency management team at the hospital and within the city and see where we can help. Is there something we need to prepare, education, tools, things like that. Another big piece is injury prevention, which we're going to get more into, but that is probably one of my favorite things about my job. Like, I get really excited about it. The community involvement, the organizations in town are phenomenal.
So tell me, so obviously in my role, you know, as EMS, so obviously, right, you know, we're making ambulance runs, and we go out and we pick up someone that possibly has had some kind of traumatic injury. We treat them, you know, in the ambulance and then get them to the hospital. So, but you also have patients coming in the front door, right? Not coming in by EMS. So what happens when you say you're obviously you're looking at how probably, you know, how these patients are being treated, not only in the ambulance, but once they get to your facility. Is it more of a, what could we do better next time? Is it, you know, what happened while they were here? How do we do it different? I mean, what happens? I know you're saying you're looking at charts, but what are you building? When you're looking at that standard of care, obviously you're gathering information, but obviously I'm sure there's a second part of that where you're coming in and going, hey, next time we need to.
Right.
Okay.
So that's the other fun part that I love about my job. So whenever we have identified the patients that either come private vehicle or EMS, where can we improve? And what do we need to do? So that it really is situational based. So if it's something where we identify that, let's say a patient came in and maybe we could have done it this way, we go back to those teams and present it in what happened in that situation, because we can look at it from a chart standpoint and say, oh, this patient probably could have gotten this, but we don't know what type of situation that either EMS crew was in, the nurses were in, maybe the patient was combative, or lots of different things. But it gives us an opportunity to talk with the team and get that type of feedback so they can share, we didn't have the equipment, we needed this process in place, and that will guide us. So that's kind of a loaded question where it will.
Well, and a lot of times, you know, from our side, and I know you know this, so a lot of times, you know, you and your team are emailing me as the EMS administrator. You know, we've gone and we've made this call, and they will, you know, y'all will reach out to us like, obviously, you know what happened with the patient. They got to the hospital. This is what they, you know, they ended up having this broken, or this is what was wrong. They got admitted for this, or they got discharged and went home with this. And a lot of times we don't ever get that closure. So we don't know if what we did was good, if what we did was bad. In our, you know, our suspicion of what we thought was going on, you know, we treated them this way. We really don't know sometimes. So, I mean, there is a lot of loop closure too on my end. So a lot of times, you know, you're telling me, hey, this patient ended up having this. I go and talk to the paramedic that did good or bad, and there's a lot of education that way, you know, on that side too. So we change a lot of what we do on the next call because of what you've told us, good or bad, that we've done.
And that, I'm glad you brought that up. So a lot of people, you know, when I first started my job, it was, unfortunately, I was only bringing out like, hey, we missed this, or hey, talk to me about this. And I noticed like I'd be coming down the hall and the nurses are like, oh my gosh, she's coming. And I was like, I got to change that that atmosphere. So we do give that positive feedback.
We get a lot of attaboys and attagirls and that's huge. At least on our side. I can tell you, I don't know about it in the hospital, but EMS sometimes, because we don't ever get that closure, we drop people off at the hospital and we really don't know what happens. For the hospital, for your team, for y'all to come back and say, hey, great job on this one, thanks for catching this. Hey, great thinking on you. We're thinking like, what if this could happen? And I know that's really big for San Angelo Fire Department personnel, and I'm sure all EMS, because it's not just San Angelo Fire. We've got a lot of patients coming in from other communities too, you know, from all over Tom Green County.
And that's why when you were talking about how we do that feedback with the EMS liaison piece that we have on our trauma team is huge, because you have a sole person, and the firefighters and paramedics feel very comfortable going directly to that person. So having that person as a resource to funnel things through, good and bad, is.
Well, and
it's great.
Our citizens win there. I mean, obviously, you know, they're getting, you know, it's tying the pre-hospital and the hospital piece together, so that basically the care the level of care they're going to get and the consistency of care they're going to get all the way through the system is better, which is the whole point.
Right, exactly. And then also the education. So even when you find something that, even if it went really well, maybe there's something where, hey, we haven't seen this in a while, or man, we're seeing it all the time, and that's where it can drive what we've talked about. There's just so much to that process of injury prevention, education. What do we need?
I want to talk a little bit about the education. So people live here in San Angelo will see sometimes, campaigns or ads or, some social media campaigns or flyers or classes that come out. How do you choose those? So like when you talk about the Regional Advisory Council, the RAC, some of the things that we put out to the RAC, obviously you get this data. What do you do with the data? Other than just looking at the charts, clearly, so if we see some water safety education comes out, why are we seeing that? Tell me a little bit about how that works.
So, and like Mason said, so we're gathering all of this data, but what are we doing with it? So if we identify that there's water safety concerns, or we've noticed there's a lot of patients being injured around the water of all ages, or I'm going to bring up fall safety. So a huge percentage of our population have fall injuries. Right. And so that's what's driving it. We're not just like pulling it out of thin air like, today sounds great to do life jackets.
Right.
We really are looking at all of our data, looking at what our community is seeing, because if we did like shark bite education, that's not very...
Not a whole lot of sharks in Tom Green County.
Right, and so that sounds fun, but how could it benefit our community? And so when we truly look, we have two bodies of water, and three if you start, kind of traveling outside of the community, and things like that, or bicycles. Lots of kids are on bicycles, lots of falls are occurring, and so how can we help our community and our surrounding areas within the RAC that are seeing the same things?
Gotcha.
So all of that data gets pulled. We have a lot of discussions at these committee meetings on what are you seeing? What do you guys want to do? Because a lot of people have great ideas, but then they're like, what do we do with it? And so we can stop and brainstorm, because we don't always have the answer, but when people are bringing those ideas to the table, we're seeing burns, we're seeing this. All right, there's a lot of resources out there that are free for education.
And the reason I'm bringing that up is so when they see these things on social media about, why are they talking about car seats? Man, they're really pushing the car seats. Obviously, you are seeing something at the hospital that says, hey, we need to talk about car seats. So I think that is, it's not just about pumping good information out and flipping a coin and going, let's do this safety this month. You are literally using data-driven education, I guess you could say. So
and that's awesome. And that's something that probably a lot of people don't know. They're like, man, this sounds fun, we can get a free life jacket, or man, this sounds fun, we can get a free car seat. And we're so excited to have people come and attend the events to do that. That's why we're doing it. But there's that reason behind it of why are we doing it and what are we seeing.
Well, and tell me a little bit about, so we know that you do, obviously you're looking at standardization of care and correcting that in the pre-hospital and the hospital setting. Then you've got the data, and that helps you drive what education that you're going to pump out and you're going to produce. How do you get it out? Tell me a little bit. Tell me about Safe Kids. Tell me a little bit about Safety City. Tell me about from the hospital side and your role at the hospital. How do you put those out, and how do you get that education out there?
Let me do a quick hair flip for Joey.
He's so jealous right now.
I know. Yes, sorry, just had to rub that in.
Yes, here, I'll do it too.
There we go. Just quick.
Thank you.
Just so,
that's for you, Joey.
We miss you, Joey.
Yeah.
So there's so many different avenues to answer that question. So it depends. Like, for example, right now we're doing a burn education for the beginning of next year. But we were like, how do we get this out? Do we do it just here in Tom Green? Do we do it for the RAC? And so we are going to do it for the RAC, because a lot of these hospitals and EMS agencies are seeing burn victims, and then they're transferring either into San Angelo or transferring out to a level 1 trauma center. So they need to know that initial care. And so that, for example, that helped us pick, how do we get this out and who do we distribute this to? And
in the RAC, I want to mention, I don't think we talked about what the RAC does, but so who is in RAC is basically all of our EMSs in our area and all of the hospitals in our area. So it is huge that when we say the RAC, it's literally all the healthcare providers
in the surrounding area.
That are all involved. So.
And the beauty of it is they're all so engaged. So if I think about it, when I think of trauma and why I like what I'm doing is if it's my family member or somebody that I care about, I want them to have the best care. And I want the teams to be able to provide that best care. So the resources, the education, the tools. So that's when I think about this, and our team thinks about that at the hospital. We think about it in that way of what do they need to provide this care for this patient. And even if we found something that maybe could have had a little bit better situation or process or whatever. How do we make that happen the next time to provide that?
And I want to expand on the rack. So one of the other things that you did and kind of headed up through the rack was
we did
Shattered Dreams. You did spearhead it. Let's not pretend like you didn't. You didn't. That was a huge project. I was lucky enough to be a part of it, and our own Brian Groves produced it and did all the videography. And
won all those awards.
I made a joke that you won a Grammy, but there was an actually Emmy won. Am I correct about that?
Yeah, he won an Emmy.
He won an
and
Emmy.
Tons of awards
He won an
across
Emmy.
the
He
board.
won an Emmy.
Just so y'all know.
An Emmy. He's famous. I know him. So, but I want to put that was a big deal. I mean, obviously we identified a need. Shattered Dreams is big. Talking about the safety concerns and the effects of drunk driving and how that can happen. And that was, there was I can't even name everybody that was involved with that. Wall Volunteer Fire Department, San Angelo Fire Department.
And you know who actually came up with the idea? So everybody knows the helmet lady, Katie Wiedenhofer.
Yes.
She approached
Safe Kids,
me.
and she used to run Safe Kids.
She was with Safe Kids,
Yep.
and so she actually came to me. When I think I was pretty new in my role, and she had come to me and said, "Have you ever heard of Shattered Dreams?" And I'm like, vaguely. I mean, it wasn't.
And this is really different. This is really different than most Shattered Dreams.
Right.
I mean, like a lot of smaller towns. I've worked in some smaller EMSs, and we do a simulation, on the road, and all the kids come out and watch. This was like a full blown. We did a video, and the video transitioned into live scene, in the middle of the Coliseum floor, and it was. I mean, there were so many players there. It was like real. It was crazy.
And it came about because when Katie brought it and said, "Will you think about doing this?" I really started researching. I'm like, okay, I've heard of this program, but I really don't know what it is.
Right.
Started looking, and then we were seeing that and no offense, I mean, just somebody doing this program is phenomenal.
Yeah.
So them doing it at a local school, or like you said, a lot of smaller places. But when we approached the bigger schools in town, they said, man, not to
logistically
down the
how are you
program,
gonna do it?
and they said, some kids can't see, they can't hear, and then, typically the crash happens at night, and then they're here during the day, and it just isn't, and then kids lose interest. And so that's when we brought it back to our team and said, all right, guys, so they said they'll think about it, but we have to fix this. How do we do that? And that's when the ideas started getting thrown out there about the Coliseum, and the right people got.
If you haven't watched it, you need to go watch it. It's on YouTube.
Yes.
It is unbelievable.
It was in 2017, but the right people were at the table, and they were all engaged because, I mean, I get chills thinking about it. We want to protect the kids, we want to protect the people in our community, and by getting that, what if one person chose not to drink and drive?
I agree.
Or one person chose not to be distracted?
Which is the whole reason your job exists. Correct?
Right. And it's, I mean, and we're like, if we can change one person's outcome, I mean, trauma is the worst day of that person's life. And so when you can help stop that or prevent that, I mean, that's why we do what we do. So
tell me, so we've talked about, I mentioned car seats, we talked about, Shattered Dreams, which is really aimed more at youth. But injury prevention is not just about youth. It's not just, our kids are not the only ones that are having accidents. So tell me a little bit about the age ranges. So obviously they're, the bicycle safety, we think of, mostly children, right?
But we do see adults get injured on bicycles.
So tell me a little bit about your injury prevention and how, the age ranges and the different types of education that could come out.
So all ages. I mean, and not that that's a surprise, but it really is across the board. I mean, it's from even during pregnancy, we have certain trauma activations to protect that mom and baby, and why we're teaching what we teach in the community all the way until, death. I mean, it really is every single age group. It just maybe depends on what type of education we're providing, but you're exactly right. So we see a lot of kid safety in the community because we have some really good agencies that have that specialized training. Safe Kids, DPS, TxDOT. The hospital provides training for car seats. I think you maybe got certified.
Yes.
So if anybody needs a car seat, just kidding. And we have those agencies that are very vested in that, and they have the tools to do so. But then they'll also do the other education with us, or the other injury prevention. But falls is a big one, and that hits pediatric patients, so kids, infants, all the way to our geriatric elderly population. The water safety, boating safety, that's all ages.
That's big time.
And so it really is just what are we seeing? And we may focus on pediatrics during a certain time of year, but we're constantly doing stop the bleed training. We're constantly doing, and I say we, I mean, it's not just me. I mean, it's every agency across the board with fall prevention and all these different pediatric events too.
Well, obviously, we've mentioned kind of like big safety topics, right? Boating safety, bicycle safety. or water safety, but it's not just the big ones too, right? I mean, y'all do some like seasonal stuff, right? You know, Christmas safety tips, Halloween safety tips.
Yes. And some of those might just be more handouts. And the beauty of it is that with Safe Kids, it's a worldwide agency. So we have Safe Kids San Angelo with Jamie Harden that does that coordinator position, but also she has some amazing tools with Safe Kids Worldwide. So even, I mean, I've done something as small as like sending it out to my kids' school, sending it out to my kids' daycare, and they can share it with the parents or post it, because you can teach Christmas safety and toy safety, but sometimes just a handout's really nice for somebody to look over, and maybe when they're going to purchase a toy. That was something that Katie Wiedenhofer had shared with me was, you know, these grandparents are going out and they see that age, but they're like, well, it says 3, but surely my 1-year-old will be there. And it teaches why that age is on there and like why that's appropriate for that age group. So sometimes it's not always just like a big event, but it might just be, like you said, a handout.
Well, let me ask you, so what if somebody needed to get a hold of you? What if somebody had a question about something or didn't know, you know, hey, I've got a question about this. I got, you know, you brought up the car seats. That's always a big one. And what if somebody needed to get a hold of you? Is there a way that they could get in touch with you and at least you could steer them in the right direction?
Probably the easiest way would be email, just because of I am moving between both campuses sometimes, so I'd hate for somebody, I'd miss their call or something like that, but they could email me, and it's just Amy Coates with no E, so AMYCOATS @shannonhealth.org.
Well, the good thing is the guy that's producing this won an Emmy, and he's really good at putting it right.
So he can just stick it right there. Spelling will be there.
He's
everything.
So good at that stuff. He's really
that
good.
guy's very talented.
Well, that's awesome. Well, Amy, I am so glad that you came today. I'm very excited that we had you on the show. I'm also really glad to look and like see hair. It's really nice.
Is it like blowing
the
your
glare?
mind?
There's no glare. It's really it's so much easier to do. I'm kidding. No, seriously. I know how amazing of a nurse you are and how much you care about not only our community, but what you do in our community and all these boards that you serve on. And I think you're pretty awesome. I think you do a pretty good job.
But I couldn't do it without our whole team. I mean, it really is a community-wide, the whole trauma team at Shannon, all the ER nurses, the ICU nurses, the staff nurses. I mean, everybody is involved in this, and they really have that buy-in and that want to do the best they can, which then I just kind of help kind of guide stuff. So.
Well, thank you for being here, and thank you for what you do for our community. So, for On Scene, I'm Mason Matthews.
Thank y'all for having me. I'm Amy Coates.
Yeah, you're supposed to, and then you're also supposed to say, we'll see you next time, and then you say next time, because that's what Joey usually says.
All right, let's try that again.
All right, you ready? So,
what am I supposed to say again? Hold on.
You're going to say,
we'll see you next time.
I'm going to say, so for On Scene, I'm Mason Matthews, and we'll see you next time, and you say next time.
Understood. I'm ready.
You ready?
Yep.
Okay, so for On Scene, I'm Mason Matthews, and we'll see you next time.
Next time.